For a full second, I wondered if I'd actually done it, if I'd really pulled the plug that would send our entire cloud infrastructure into total darkness. Then I remembered his smirk, the way he'd said it in front of the whole team, and my hesitation evaporated. My 5-year-old nephew has a better work ethic than you. That was Brent. Senior project manager. Self-appointed productivity god. And my boss. I'm Noah, the lead cloud engineer at NimbusByte Solutions, a mid-sized SaaS company where the lights never go off, unless someone like me decides they should. I keep the back end alive, servers, clusters, pipelines. The stuff no one notices until it breaks. Brent, on the other hand, strutted around with a clipboard and a calendar app, convinced that barking deadlines equaled leadership. We weren't enemies. Not at first. When I joined 3 years ago, he actually seemed impressed by how fast I automated deployment processes. He used to call me the wizard. But as his responsibilities grew, so did his ego. And as my workload grew under his micromanaging, so did my resentment. By last quarter, Brent treated me less like a team member and more like a button he could push. Need you to spin up a hotfix environment. Why isn't staging done? You should stay late tonight. Again. But the breaking point came last Friday during our all-hands sprint review. I presented a new failover system I'd quietly built that would cut downtime by 40%. I expected at least a nod. Instead, Brent interrupted halfway through. Nice idea, Noah, but this is why you keep falling behind. You tinker. You never work. If you had real discipline, maybe we wouldn't constantly be in crisis mode. The room went silent. My ears burned. He laughed like he'd just taught me something valuable, then moved on. That night, long after everyone else had left, I sat alone in the dim server room, the hum of machinery normally calming, now sounding like applause for his insult. In that moment, an idea, dangerous, petty, brilliant, slid into my mind. We had a directors' meeting on Monday morning. High stakes. Brent would be presenting performance metrics pulled directly from our cloud console. The console I managed. The console I had absolute access to. All I needed was 60 seconds. 1 minute of pitch-black nothingness. A blip. Technically. Harmless. Reversible. But career-ruining for a guy who worshipped uptime. When Monday arrived, I was at my desk early, pretending to debug a pipeline as Brent rehearsed his slides in the conference room. My cursor hovered over the command that would stall his entire presentation. He had no idea. And yet, as he walked past me, offering a too bright smile I didn't trust, I felt something twist in my gut, something telling me he wasn't done playing games with me. Not by a long shot. I should have felt triumphant after planning the perfect 60-second blackout. Instead, as Brent breezed past my desk that Monday morning, something about him put a knot in my stomach. His smile was too polished, like he was hiding a card up his sleeve. The first red flag appeared before the directors' meeting even started. I overheard him on a call in the hallway, talking in that low, conspiratorial tone he only used when he didn't want the team hearing. No, he won't be a problem, he said. He's predictable. Trust me. I froze mid-keystroke. There were only 2 engineers with access to the presentation systems, and I was one of them. Before I could listen more, he stepped back inside, catching sight of me. Instead of looking startled, he just winked. Morning, wizard, he said, like we were still friends. Then he added, hey, after the meeting, I'll need you to stay on top of those deployment delays, again. Another little jab. A reminder of my place. Red flag number 2 came during the prep run. Brent was showing off his slides to another manager, Dana. The metrics were identical to the ones I'd generated for him, except for one detail. He'd removed my name from every project credit. Every single one. It wasn't even subtle. Tasks I'd handled single-handedly were suddenly labeled Team Lead Oversight or Management Directive. Dana frowned. Didn't Noah build this failover system? Brent didn't miss a beat. He helped, sure, but the strategy came from me. I've been pushing the team to take initiative. Heat surged up my neck. Helped. I'd architected that system from scratch. He hadn't touched a single line of code. The betrayal wasn't confirmed, but it was there, lurking. A shadow forming just out of view. Still, I said nothing. Because that's what you do when you're the technical guy. You swallow it. You keep the servers running. You tell yourself it isn't worth confronting. But the emotional strain was becoming physical. I hadn't slept more than 3 hours the night before. My heart raced whenever Brent walked into the room. Even my usual comfort, the quiet hum of cooling fans, felt oppressive, like the walls were pushing in. Red flag number 3 came in the form of a Slack message he sent me minutes before the directors arrived. Brent, need you to update the production cost logs. CFO wants consistency. Brent, use the summary sheet I sent. No edits. I opened his summary sheet. It showed inflated compute usage under my department. Numbers I knew were wrong. Numbers that made it look like I was the one mismanaging server resources. Was he planning to blame me for budget issues? Was that what his secret call was about? The doubt coiled tighter. And all the while, the command box on my screen waited, one keystroke away from plunging his precious presentation into darkness. For the first time, I wondered if 60 seconds would be enough. You said. I didn't uncover the betrayal all at once. It came together like corrupted logs. Fragmented entries that only made sense when stitched into a timeline I really didn't want to believe. The directors filed into the conference room, chatting casually as Brent set up his laptop. I was supposed to be running background diagnostics from my desk, but my mind kept circling back to that suspicious call, the inflated cost sheet, the missing credits. Then the 4th red flag hit, this one not subtle at all. A notification popped up on my admin dashboard. Authorization change. Access level modified. User, n.khan. My stomach dropped. That was my account. I opened the permissions panel, fingers trembling. He had downgraded my privileges. Not completely, but enough to restrict me from certain critical control groups. Enough to make it look like I didn't have the clearance, or the competence. And he'd done it minutes before his big presentation. Why? Why would he, unless... My phone buzzed with a message from a friend in DevOps. Rear, hey, did something happen? Brent said you lost reliability credentials. Rear, he's telling people he's picking up your responsibilities. Lost reliability credentials? The words blurred. He wasn't just taking credit for my work. He was rewriting the narrative, shaping the story that I was unreliable, sloppy, a risk. Piece by piece, the betrayal clicked into place. If he convinced upper management that I was the source of the back-end instability, he could justify reassigning my duties. Maybe even demoting me. Maybe even getting me fired. And the fake cost sheet. That was his evidence. The private call. His assurance that I wouldn't be a problem. The smile that morning. Just the confidence of a man who believed he'd already won. My chest tightened so hard I had to stand just to breathe. My hands shook with something halfway between rage and disbelief. After everything I'd built, everything I'd fixed, everything I'd buried myself in to keep this company afloat, he was going to burn me to the ground to make himself look like a savior. My screen reflected my face, pale, stunned, furious enough to vibrate. I could have marched into the conference room and confronted him in front of the directors. I could have reported the unauthorized access change. I could have forwarded the falsified logs to the CFO. But then I looked at the blinking cursor in my command window, the one linked directly to the cluster he needed for his entire presentation. 60 seconds of darkness. 1 minute where every metric, every chart, every achievement he planned to parade would collapse. My finger hovered over the enter key. My heartbeat synced with the server fans, loud and restless. For the first time, retaliation didn't feel petty. It felt earned. And he had no idea how close he was to discovering just how dark his cloud could really get. For a few seconds, all I could do was stare at the blinking cursor, this small, pulsing reminder that I held the power to flip Brent's entire world upside down. One keystroke. 1 minute of darkness. One very public humiliation. My hands shook, not with fear this time, but with something sharper. Determination forming its first edges. But then, before I could press enter, another admin alert slid across my monitor. Scheduled job created, owner, B. Martin. Target, Reliability Team Directory. My directory. My work. My scripts. I opened the details, expecting maybe a backup or an export. No. It was a replacement script. A poorly written one that referenced my old modules and slapped Brent's name in the metadata. He was preparing to overwrite my work entirely, like erasing fingerprints from a crime scene. And suddenly, something inside me snapped into place. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't micromanagement. This wasn't harsh leadership. It was erasure. Deliberate. Calculated. Personal. And in that moment, the heartbreak evaporated. The disbelief melted away. The doubt, the self-blame, the voice whispering maybe I'm overreacting, all of it burned off like fog under rising sun. What settled in its place wasn't rage anymore. It was clarity. A memory rose, uninvited, but sharp. My first month at Nimbusbyte. We'd had an outage at 3 a.m., and I'd spent 6 hours rebuilding a corrupted cluster alone. When the issue was resolved, the CEO thanked Brent publicly for coordinating a flawless recovery. Brent accepted the praise with a proud grin, never even glancing in my direction. I'd laughed it off back then. Told myself credit didn't matter as long as the system ran. But 3 years later, watching him systematically rewrite my work history and turn my career into collateral damage for his promotion, I finally understood something painful. People like Brent don't stop. They don't grow empathy. They don't wake up suddenly grateful. They just take, and take, and take, until someone pushes back. My pulse steadied. My breathing leveled. The panic that had been clawing at my ribs all morning finally loosened. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't disposable. And I wasn't going to let him bury me under his lies. But retaliation for its own sake wasn't enough. Not anymore. If I was going to fight back, it had to count. It had to expose him. It had to be undeniable. The 60-second blackout, my original plan, wasn't revenge anymore. It was justice. But I needed the timing to be perfect. I needed it to land like a hammer. I needed everyone in that conference room to understand that Brent was not the leader he pretended to be, and that his empire of self-promotion was built on my silent labor. My cursor hovered. I watched Brent through the glass wall, confidently setting up his slides, laughing with the directors like he already owned the place. And that was the moment my hurt hardened into resolve. He thought he'd written me out of the story. He hadn't realized I still controlled the lights. I couldn't wing it. Revenge had to be surgical, methodical enough to leave no room for Brent's smooth denials or his talent for rewriting history. So I sketched a plan, step by careful step, like any good engineer. Identify the failure points, secure the evidence, then execute in a way that left him nowhere to hide. I started by quietly duplicating every relevant log I could still reach: permission change records, job schedules, commit histories, and the old metrics exports that showed the real compute usage. I copied them to a private, off-site archive under throwaway account I'd set up months ago for testing. Timestamps, hashes, metanotes, everything. No edits. No dramatics. Just a pristine trail that proved what had actually happened and when. If Brent tried to claim it was a misunderstanding or that someone else made the changes, I needed an independent recorder. So I spun up a read-only mirror of the presentation cluster, no control, only observation, and hooked its output to a continuous recorder. Whatever Brent presented, whatever he touched, I would have a tamper-evident copy of it. I left a deliberately clumsy placeholder file in the reliability directory, labeled in a way any curious manager would notice. It was an obvious target. Too obvious. Then I deployed a watcher that would alert me the moment anyone attempted to overwrite it. If Brent was planning an overwrite to erase my scripts, he'd probably target something like this. If he did, the watcher would capture the attempt and link it straight to him. I compiled side-by-side comparisons, the original metrics exports versus the doctored spreadsheet Brent had circulated, clean audit logs showing his authorization change versus the fake lost credentials narrative, recorded attempts to overwrite my scripts with his metadata. I wrote concise notes, no emotion, just facts tied to timestamps. The goal was to make the story self-evident. The 60-second blackout shifted from a petty hit to a theatrical reveal. During the director's Q&A, When Brent crowed about uptime and leadership, I'd trigger a controlled, isolated pause on the presentation node. Not to destroy, but to illuminate. While his slides blinked and his charts froze, my mirror would play the recorder showing the real system stable, and my packet of evidence would be pushed to every director's inbox simultaneously. All of it had to land together: the blackout, the recordings, the archived logs, the baited overwrite attempt. One failure and he'd spin it. One timing slip and the narrative would slip through my fingers. Meanwhile, Brent strutted through the office like a man who owned tomorrow. He congratulated Dana on a smooth rollout and sent a celebratory emoji to the execs. He scheduled a 30-minute follow-up with the CFO. Perfect timing for the reveal. My hands didn't tremble now. They were steady as the metronome that would count down to his exposure. If I pulled it off, it would be vindication. If I didn't, if even a single piece failed to match up, the fallout would be on me. Either way, the next hour would decide everything. The moment the directors settled into their chairs, the room shifted, like the air itself sensed something volatile simmering beneath the polished table and corporate small talk. Brent stood at the front, laser pointer in hand, confidence dripping off him like cologne. "Today," he began, "I'll be walking you through the exceptional efficiency improvements my team has achieved under my direction." My team. His direction. The lie scraped down my spine. But I waited. The recorder on my mirrored node spun quietly. My inbox triggers slept like coiled springs. And the command that would switch his entire presentation cluster into temporary blackout sat ready under my thumb. Brent clicked to his first slide. Charts, percentages, trend lines I had generated, scrubbed of my name. He spoke with the polished ease of a man who believed his story was airtight. "Our uptime increased by roughly 12% this quarter," he continued. "And thanks to a strategy one implemented." Right on cue, my bait watcher pinged. "Alert, unauthorized overwrite attempt. User, B. Martin." He was doing it. During his own presentation. Smiling in the directors' faces while quietly trying to wipe the last of my script history. Perfect. My hands moved without hesitation. Step 1. Push the evidence packet to every director's inbox. Step 2. Initiate the blackout countdown. Step 3. Activate the mirrored feed. The directors' phones vibrated almost in unison. Some glanced down. Others ignored it. Brent kept talking. And, of course, I personally enforced tighter reliability controls when Noah. Click. The screens behind him went black. Projector. Backup display. His laptop's cast window. All of it. A heartbeat later, every dashboard widget in the room froze. Brent blinked. Confusion cracked across his face. Must be a brief glitch," he stammered. The CEO frowned. "Why is the cluster down?" Cluster down. The words Brent feared more than failure itself. He spun toward me through the glass wall. "Noah. What's going on? Did you miss another reliability check?" I didn't move. I just watched. The mirrored node, still online and perfectly stable, displayed on my screen. The recorder timestamp glowed clean and untouched. Then one of the directors, Patel, spoke up. "Brent, why did we just receive logs showing you modified Noah's permissions? And why do our actual compute records contradict your slides?" Another director looked down at her tablet. "There are 3 years of work here attributed to Noah that you listed as your own. And this attempted script overwrite," Patel added, voice sharpening. "This is happening right now." Brent's face drained of color. "No, this is out of context. Noah must have." The CEO cut him off. "Then why is the failover mirror still functioning while your presentation cluster is failing? Noah didn't touch that." Silence. 60 seconds of perfect, devastating silence. My blackout ended. The screens flickered back to life, but now they displayed my mirrored recording, Brent's unauthorized credential downgrade, the falsified spreadsheet, the overwrite attempt, every timestamp lining up like damning dominoes. Brent staggered a half step back, eyes darting like a trapped animal. The room didn't need me to say a word. For once, the truth spoke louder than his voice ever could. The directors didn't yell. They didn't accuse. They didn't need to. They just looked at Brent with the cold, stunned disappointment of people realizing they'd been applauding a fraud. He tried to talk. Of course he did. Brent always believed he could outspeech any problem. This is all being misinterpreted, he insisted, voice cracking. Noah's trying to sabotage me. He's always been unstable with deadlines. This whole thing is being twisted. But every sentence dug him deeper. Every excuse contradicted the timestamps glowing behind him. The overwrite attempt, still active in the logs, showed in real time that he was tampering. Even his own audit trails betrayed him. When the CEO finally spoke, her voice was ice. Brent, gather your belongings. HR will escort you out. He went pale. This is ridiculous. You need me. Patel shook his head. We need integrity. And uptime. Both of which we apparently owe to Noah, not you. The security officer arrived within 2 minutes. I didn't smile as they walked him out, not because I felt sorry for him, but because I didn't need to. The justice was quiet, clean, and absolute. The moment the door shut behind him, the CEO turned to me. Noah, she said, you've been carrying far more than we realized. Effective immediately, I want you leading the reliability division. With full autonomy. I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. Thank you. And, thanks for looking at the evidence. Thank you, she corrected, for keeping the company stable despite what he was doing. The praise didn't hit me all at once. It seeped in slowly, warming the cold space Brent had carved out with months of belittling and lies. By the time I returned to my desk, Slack was exploding with messages. Support, shock, disbelief, relief. People apologized for not seeing it sooner. Some admitted they suspected something was wrong but didn't know how bad it was. And for the first time in months, the hum of the servers felt like an ally again, not a burden. A week later, after the dust settled and new permissions were restored, I walked into the empty server room. The lights blinked in soft, steady rhythm. Orderly. Honest. Predictable. It hit me then, the poetic justice of it all. Brent mocked my work ethic. Brent treated the system like a throne. Brent believed he controlled the narrative. But in the end, the only thing he ever truly controlled was the exact moment his cloud went dark. If you've ever had someone take credit for your work, undermine you, or try to erase you, tell me in the comments. I want to hear your story. And if you enjoyed this revenge tale, make sure you subscribe and smash that notification bell. There are plenty more stories where this one came from.